All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I'm continuing on in my discussion of the PowerPoints of Murox ASP.NET with C# 2015, 6th edition. We are in the middle of Chapter 7 talking about validation controls. What I showed you in the last video was an example of a required field validator, a compare validator, a range validator, and I tried to do the regular expression validator, and I'm not sure, but if I do run this, let me stop the run and start the run again. So save and start the run one more time. And again, I'm going to put in here this and I'm going to put in a bad phone number. And I do get invalid or missing phone number. That's good. Okay, but it's taking that. So invalid. Okay, so that's invalid. So it is working. Now, a couple things, because I want to get back to the PowerPoints. CSS class, well, I spelled error wrong, so that's why that isn't working. So let's look at that. Let's stop the run here, and we'll start the run up again. Oops. So let's stop the run and start the run up again. Let's see. Okay, required. Invalid or missing, and it's the right format, so that's good. Should still say invalid or missing, that's good. That should be valid, and it should also be valid if I do it in this way, I believe. Okay, so that's all working. So the regular expression validator is working, so I've shown you 4 of the 5. So let's jump back here. So I showed you the required field, I showed you the compare, I showed you the range, I showed you the regular expression, I did not show you the custom, oops, and I did not show you the validation summary. So we'll have to add those in just a bit. All right, let's go and go back to our slides here. I don't want to miss anything. So I went over those. Those were our validators. That was the code we mentioned. I went over the properties, went over that, went over to NuGet, so we talked about the unobtrusive validation, and please remember that when you are working with that, and this is mentioned in the book on page 250 and 251. In Chapter 2, we were introduced to unobtrusive validation. When you use it, the validation on the client uses jQuery. jQuery is a JavaScript library. The benefit of using jQuery is it reduces the amount of JavaScript that has to be generated. All right, and it also is more cross-browser compatible. Even though unobtrusive validation is on by default, when you start a new web application, it's been turned off. So I showed you how to add it using NuGet. Okay, and I mentioned that there's other ways also, but that's the way that I did it. Now, they do mention a note on the bottom of page 250 where the author says, as this book goes to print, a newer version of NuGet that includes jQuery 3.0 has become available. Unfortunately, this may conflict with earlier versions of the NuGet package. If you run into a problem, it says you may run into a problem with this, and it's pretty much, I believe at least, has been kind of ferreted out, and it all works. All right, so I showed you how to get the NuGet. Okay, we went over the control to validate for the required entry. We went over the error message, so you've seen that already. This is a required field validator. Again, I don't like those kind of names, RFV for required field validator. If you like them, use them. I used required field validator name is what I would name this one. Of course, we need the ID and the run at because that shows that they are server-side controls. For the required entry, you need the control to validate. And if you don't give it a message, it just gives you a generic message, which doesn't make much sense. I like to say what it is, so if it's a required field, I'll say something like name field is required. You don't have to do that, but I think at least it's a good idea to do that. All right? You can use an initial value. If this value isn't changed, then the validation fails. So for instance, here the initial value would say mm/dd/yyyy. And the error message is you must enter a birth date. So if you put in an initial value and you don't change it, all right, then that would say that, oh, well, you just left the default in there, which isn't valid. So here's an example of code that's shown in the book on page 253, where you can use the required field validator. Again, this checks that the user entered data into the associated input control. Usually it's used with text box controls. Occasionally, at least, you'll see it like here with list controls. Again, if you set that initial value property, you should set the starting value for the field that's being validated to the same value. All right? Most of the validation controls that we're talking about pass their validation tests if the user does not enter a value, except for the required field validator like this one. All right, so that's the required field. Let's look at compare. We did this one, remember, with the salary. So the value to compare, the compare validator, we did that one with the password and the re-enter password. That was our compare validator. So the value to compare, in our case, that was the re-enter password. No, that was the original password, okay? So we did this. We didn't have to change the type because the type defaults to string, and since we were comparing a password, it worked just fine. If you do a number like this, notice what they're doing. So they're doing some kind of a field here, a quantity, which the operator, which defaults to equal, they've changed it to greater than, and the value to compare is 0, which means you must enter a positive quantity. There's other ways that you can do this as well. So here's an example that checks for an integer value. So they're asking here to enter a years. Now, this may not be the best kind of check to make because all you're checking here is to make sure that it's a number. Instead of using the compare here, you might have wanted to use a compare or even a range validator instead, where you could have set the type to integer and maybe the minimum value would have been 1 and the maximum value, for example, 125. So here's comparing the value in two text boxes. This is similar to what we did for the password and the re-enter password. Our control to compare was our text box re-enter password, and our control to validate was text box re-enter password, and our control to compare was text box password. We kept the operator at equal to, and the type just defaulted to string, so we didn't have to change that. All right, the range validator, that is the one, yes it is, the range validator, that is the one that we used for the salary. I changed the type to currency because to me that made the most sense. Double or integer would have worked also, but be leery with integer because we saw that with our future value example that we did earlier, that if you use an integer, it has to be a whole number. So we had integer originally, but we put in 3.0. So we had to go back and change that from type integer to type double. When you're doing this, you should also have a minimum and a maximum value if they pertain. But since it's arranged, they typically will. All right, and usually these are used with numeric fields. So again, the minimum value allowed for the control, the maximum value allowed for the control, and the data type. And again, the data type may be string, or integer, or double, or date, or currency. I believe that in the book they've got an example they use here, at least they did in the old version of the book. See if it's still in here or not. Yeah. So if you look in here, you've got an arrival date and a departure date. And the arrival date must come before the departure date, otherwise it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. That type of an idea. All right, so that's another place where you might want to use something like that for a for a range validator. Okay. All right. So it says code that sets the minimum and maximum values at runtime. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, again, looking at that in the example that they're showing here, maybe you're working with something like a product somebody just ordered. So the order date you would set to today's date. And maybe the payment due date is 30 days after the order date or 30 days after the ship date. So in other words, with something like this, it would be possible that you would be filling things in based on a form or some other kind of user input. So you can also do this stuff at runtime is what they're saying. All right, the regular expression validator. Do want to spend a little bit more time on this. A regular expression, and I've shown this before in other classes, I will continue to show it because I think it does a good job, and that is I'm going to go out to regular, gotta spell it right, R-E-G-U-L-A-R, dash expression .info. Not a pretty site, but an unbelievably functional site. There's tutorials, tools and languages. All right, so if I go to the tools and languages, if I look through here, there's .NET, so that's probably what I would use. All right. There's VB.NET syntax, which probably is going to be pretty darn close to C# syntax. Okay, so you can look through there. Again, it is regular-expressions.info, and it's not case dependent. Again, not a pretty site, but a very, very good site. They've even got a nice, if you go out to it, nice tutorial on regular expressions. In fact, I think there are several tutorials in here. Okay? All right. So a regular expression is a string that you use for pattern matching. You can use regular expressions with a regular expression validator to make sure that the user entry matches a specific entry or a specific pattern. You can use the custom expression that's built into the standard expression by selecting an expression in the regular expression editor. The problem that I had trying to show you that was bringing up that regular expression editor, and I don't remember how you do that. So I was looking for some help in the book here. There it is. So notice it's got US phone number, etc., and there's other things that are in here too. So if I had another field in here, there's social security number, US social security number. Let's try that. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm doing this again off the top of my head, which is, I told you, I like doing this. So I'm going to grab everything we had here from phone number, everything. and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to come down to the bottom of my table. I'm going to paste that in. Why am I doing this? Well, there's the phone number, so I'm going to change this, and I'm going to put here Social Security number. All right, so the ID will be text box, which is called sossec_num. All right, run at his server, that's fine. Required field validator will be required field validator sossec_num. Run at server. All right, we'll have here SSN is required. The control to validate will be the text box sossec_num. All right, then we're coming to this one. This will also be regular expression sossec_num. Run at his server, invalid or missing SSN. The field to validate will be text box soss. I screwed that up. Sossec_num, and the expression for now I'm going to leave that blank. All right, we can change that in just a moment. I'm hoping to be able to change that more magically. So I've added another field. Notice that all works, but I've got to fix this. So right now, if I put anything in here, oops, that's got to have another digit. There. Now it's invalid or missing SSN. But if I put a number in there even, well, it's still saying invalid or missing. Oh, it's because I don't have any pattern in there, so I want to put a pattern in there. So let's go back into here, stop the run. All right. And let's go and find the validation expression, click. Now I'm going to go down and find U.S. Social Security number. And let's take a look at what this means. All right. In English, because it may or may not make a lot of sense to you, I don't know. This says the \D means that whatever follows is a digit. If it was a capital D instead of a lowercase d, it would mean that whatever follows can't be a digit. So this says digit. The number in here specifies how many. So in English, this says 3 digits. So I need 3 digits, followed by a hyphen, followed by 2 digits, followed by a hyphen, followed by 4 digits. So that is the regular expression pattern. So let's run this again, and let's put all our stuff in. In fact, I don't care about that, but let's notice if it's missing, we get it's required. But if I put in 333-44-555, I'm leaving off the last digit, invalid or missing SSN. As soon as I make it valid, now the messages go away. And for completeness, let's look at the other expression pattern that we had for the phone number. This says I can have parentheses, all right? But regardless of whether I have them or not, I need 3 digits. And if I have a parenthesis, I have to finish it. So I have 3 digits, okay? Then I have 3 digits with a hyphen. Oh, so this just says I can have 3 digits. I don't know why. So I guess that would be like a country code. Or I can have 3 digits and a dash, 3 digits and a dash, and 4 digits. In English, this is saying I can use either this kind of a format. Bring this up here. So I can say parenthesis number space number dash number, or I can say number dash number. Okay, I don't know if it'll take it like this, where I can set it up so it does this without the space. All right. Nope, I want to save that. So let's check. So can I put a phone number in here that's got in parentheses number, then no space? Yes, it'll take that format also. Will it take multiple spaces? No, it will not. So I can either put it in as number, dash number, dash number, and you'll see it takes it, or I can put it in as parenthesis number, parenthesis with a space, and it'll take that, or I can leave the space out and it'll take that. So those are the three. That's the regular expression pattern that I was trying to show you. So the regular expression validator matches a user entry with the pattern that's specified. You can write your own, or if you're using the common things, as I just showed you, you can use the regular expression editor dialog box. Now, they go over next in the book here, and they give you a very, very short little primer on how to work with regular expressions. Here's an example where we used the zip code that had to be 5. So it had to look like that. And I will just tell you that usually you'll see it where it looks like this for a zip code. Get rid of all this. Where it's got \D 5 or \D5 followed by a hyphen followed by a \D4. So this says either 5 digits or 5 digits followed by a hyphen followed by 4 digits. So you can do it either way. Okay? All right, we're making some progress here. There's the US phone number. I already explained that one to you. Here is the chart that is shown on page 261 in the book. Again, if you go through the regular-expression.info, you'll get a lot more information. Regular expressions are one thing that as a programmer you should understand. It's not at all inconceivable that you could go in for a job interview and be asked questions regarding regular expressions. Again, here's some examples as shown on the bottom of page 261, and on the very bottom of the page the author mentions, for more information or for more specific types of expressions you can search the internet. Well, yes, you can. But as I told you, a nice place to start for this is regular-expressions.info. Okay? All right. Next is the custom validator, which I did not go over with you. You can use the custom validator to validate input data using user-defined tests. All right? The properties that are connected to this are value, which is the text string you want to validate. And again, that is valid, which is set to true if it passes the test, and it's set to false if it does not. All right? I'm not going to go through that anymore. There's no problem with it, and I mean it's a great thing to have, but by and large, the first 4 validators that we already went over, the regular validator, the required validator, the compare validator, the range validator, and the regular expression validator should suffice for literally almost 100% of the stuff that you want to cover. Again, I'm being a little bit, just a little bit off there, but normally it will. All right. So there's your code for custom validation. let's talk about the validation summary control. Okay? All right. You saw all of those messages that I put in previously in the code here. Everybody saw them. Okay? I'm going to leave them there because I've got this. It's looking halfway decent. But what I want to do is I want to go over into design mode. All right? And right here, I'm going to hit enter a few times. But right there, I want to go in and grab a validation summary and drop it off in there. Okay? Now let's run the program again with doing nothing else. And click submit. Notice what I get. My same error messages. But the difference is now they're all congregated into one place. See that? That's what a validation summary does. So let's go back and take a look at it. First thing is, let me stop my run. All right. I'm gonna change the name of this, even though it's a dumb name. I'm gonna call it validation summary garbage, because that's the name of the form that I've been working with. There's my run at equals server. All right, I can come back in here and again add my CSS class of error as we did before. Notice the IntelliSense picked it up right here also. Why did I do that? Well, now notice that when I run it, now they're all red. Now, is that a big thing? Of course not. I like the way it looks a little bit better. Okay? Now, in order to do this, typically what you do is I will change the values that are shown here. That was my error text. And I will change the error text there. And I will set the error messages in here. All right. If you say, I have no idea what you just said, then let's look at it. All right. Now, I'm going to go up to my first validator that I put in here, which was the required field for the name, just so there's something there. All right. Notice that we've got error message here. And for error message, okay, it actually has the message that's going to be produced. Okay? There's another way that I can set this up. First of all, let's go back and let's do this. Let's do this. Notice on here, I'm going to come back here, and right now the display class on all of these is set to static. I'm going to change all of them so that the display is equal to dynamic. All right, why did I do that? Hopefully, you're going to see why in just a second. So, I'm going to do this. I'm going to add those to every one of these that I have in here. Whoops. So again, I'm coming back in here and I'm adding for each one of these, and I should make sure I don't miss any. So required field, display equal dynamic, required field, display as dynamic, re-enter password, required field, display as dynamic, compare, display as dynamic, required field, display as dynamic, range, display as dynamic. This gets a little boring after a while. Phone, display as dynamic. The other phone, display as dynamic. Social security number, display as dynamic. The other social security number, display as dynamic. Whoops, that's wrong. It's got to go here. Here we go. All right. So let's just do those, just those. All right, why did I do that? I wanted to show you because there is a difference now. You see I still get my errors. That's not changed. But now I'm going to put the Social Security number in the wrong format. Okay? And I'm surprised. I thought that it was going to display over there, but it didn't. All right? The dynamic should have said that I didn't want to use that room there. I thought that everything would display in that column. Again, I can be wrong. It very well could be because of the way I set it up in the table and where I told it to display. That's probably why it looks like that. All right? But you should set them to dynamic. That's my opinion. Okay, for whatever that is or is not worth. Let's jump back. Check my time. I'm at 30 minutes. I'm way over time. Sorry. So I'll come back with another version, continue on in just a moment.